Well, I'd say the first half I thought he was pretty good. Just how calm he was. He was pretty accurate. He wasn't throwing. What does Peyton call his balls? A soft wobble,
tight wobble,
tight wobble. I thought he was throwing. You and I were texting back and forth. He was throwing some spirals. Now there are going to be one or two plays a game, and it literally happens in every Kyle Shanahan game where he is going to scheme you a play that the guy is going to score on. And years ago, when you and I talked with Kittle talked about it. This is when Kittle was young. We had him on the pod. A lot of new listeners since then. And Kittle, because we talked about the Austin Hooper thing, about Austin Hooper saying Kyle Shanahan's like this. He tells you to do certain things on a route, and like this is going to happen in the game. And if you listen, it'll work and it'll pop. And that was a play to Croft. That play might have been Kittle if he was healthy, but either way, like it was an overthrow. Now, I tweeted this immediately. I had this thought immediately, like the Niners have been missing that play even when they've been good. So it's not like that's just kind of what they've been doing. And that's a problem. And even Kyle mentioned that in his post-game press conference. We got to hit that play. Like, Trey, you have to hit that play. The schemed touchdown. And they didn't. But I thought until the rain at the end became a monsoon, I'm sorry. I have no opinion. Like, I'm not crushing him for like throwing shitty passes in the monsoon. Now, the pick to Eddie Jackson, one problem for Kyle and this offense, and it happened last year, when the run game isn't flowing, and once Mitchell, let's hope, doesn't tear his ACL or something, but he was immediately ruled out. And if you follow the NFL longer enough, when you immediately ruled out, that's not a good sign, right, with a knee.
Especially for a guy who's played banged up.
Yeah, and who's had knee injuries. Right?
Yeah.
I would say that Kyle's offense historically has been predicated run first, and then the pass just dominates off that. Then I got Andy Reid in the background. Like, Andy just drops back and throws 4 or 5 wide, right? Kind of like spread offenses. And that is not how Kyle wants to play. And he's clearly, it's hard to judge because they were in a monsoon, but I don't think he wants to play like that with Trey yet. And he shouldn't. You and I led up to the whole season like they're going to be like a Patriot last year on steroids. That's how he wants to play. But there does come a point in time, like, once Mitchell's out of the game today, can you just – I thought Trey was pretty calm. Like, let him keep slinging around. Your two fucking best players are 19 and 11. How 11 hit a couple big plays. Like, they're comfortable. Throw the ball to Ayuk. Throw the ball to Debo. Like, you got to like spread it. Jeff Wilson, I like the guy, I guess. In theory, he looks slow to me. So you keep hammering the run. They just 3 and out or a couple first downs and then punt. You got to be more explosive on offense. That today is a point of difference you have over the Bears. Justin Fields had to pull plays out of his ass for them to score, and he did. But the Niners can just run plays and give your quarterback a chance. And who knows? Maybe Kyle goes, I don't feel comfortable with hitting him. Well, you're not scoring any points, and if a couple things go wrong, all of a sudden the game flipped. Like, a huge point of difference when they go into these games, especially against worse teams, is 19 and 11. Like, those guys are a point of separation for the franchise, even with Kittle out. And if you're not willing to, I wouldn't say force feed them the ball, which they did with Debo running the ball, but I mean from a passing standpoint, especially 11. Like, that's the whole thing, right? Oh, this guy's like Jerry Rice Jr. now, and then he makes some sweet plays in the game, and then you don't throw it to him anymore.
2 receptions. He had a third wiped out by a penalty. Justin Fields was 8 of 17 for 121 in the game. Trey Lance was 13. Trey Lance had as many runs as he did completions, 13. Trey Lance was 13 of 28. Throws 27 and 28 came at the very, very end when the Fox TV had to superimpose the yard markers and the lines on the field. Okay.
Where would you count his 3rd and 5 interception to Eddie Jackson? Like, right before the monsoon, still not great weather.
Bad throw, but to me, like, that's one of those picks on target to the receiver, just did not account for the defender, as opposed to like later in the game. Now, again, I don't want to, he throws the ball high that gets deflected and is flying in the air. Monsoon ball.
See, I didn't think, but he wasn't doing that early on when the weather wasn't that terrible.
No. So I don't think that was, but to me, it's a bad throw, kind of an on-target throw. Like, he had a great throw to Dwelly on 3rd down, right? That was a little behind Dwelly. Dwelly made a great catch. Linebacker was right there. That's one of those, linebacker could have picked it, didn't, goes right through his arms. Dwelly's right there. It's a great play and a great throw. So the interception was bad because of the circumstances of the game. I don't think if we threw the film up of that pick, you'd go, oh my God, that's
you could have flipped around TV today, and that's happening in other games.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, he was about 50%. Okay, if I'm taking out the last two throws when he was throwing knuckleballs, he was 50%. I know this. There is no way if you knew what that game was going to look like from a weather standpoint, and this is to your point on the run game, that you want to throw the ball 28 times. Like 28 is what we talked about. 28 attempts is what we talked about being a high end of his number of attempts in just your general fill in the blank weak opponent and destination game.
I agree.
So it's just way too. Just 28 is not going to be. You down 11 points, so whatever. 13 runs. He was their leading rusher. Also not ideal, right? That feels like too many runs for him. But they just were in too many circumstances where they couldn't afford to be picky with how they played their offense. And honestly, I thought in short yardage, he was fantastic. If we're just talking about Trey evaluations, short yardage, he's really good. Clearly, what they could sneak it with Jimmy. They had a sneak early in the game on a one. It was a 2-yard 1 yard. It was a long one, and they got it. I still think he looks uncomfortable running in terms of just understanding when to just go and when to kind of dance around. That said, he also looked uncomfortable with his footing, so I'm not going to judge him too much in this game on that. I was texting with a buddy of ours who was ready for Jimmy at halftime. Honestly, that thought it entered my mind because I know it's a storyline, but
I'm with you.
It was never a consideration or even considering a consideration to me.
I thought earlier in the game when there was the stretch where the field was a problem, but it was not raining. Or if it was, you couldn't really tell on television, and it didn't feel like it was impacting the game. He was much more accurate than I had anticipated, and that's where I thought Kyle could have been more aggressive with him, especially that little stretch where Mitchell disappears, where you can take advantage of him throwing the ball. Once you had to lean on him throwing the ball in the late in the fourth quarter, completely screwed. But I thought there were stretches in the second quarter and the third quarter, lean on his arm a little bit more, because I did think he was pretty comfortable. And even the miss to Croft, I'd rather miss over than miss way short and have the DB have a chance to make a play or something, right? I thought he was pretty comfortable throwing the ball for a large portion of the game. And then when the game was in that position, they were completely screwed. But I don't think Kyle, and I know his offense is predicated that, but you got to kind of be, adaptable given. I just think he's always going to, early on in this guy's career, and this is how he's always wanted to play, and it works a lot of the time, but just run first. And then a lot of his plays, like when you say he's not comfortable running, I think a lot of it has to do with that boot play action Shanahan play, right? Well, what happens when you're not running the ball down people's throat? That defensive end that you're basically hoping dives down doesn't budge. And say what you want, and I'll say his name correctly. Eberflus. That's how do you say it?
Uber. You had it right earlier.
I thought everyone's saying when I say Uberflus.
Oh.
I thought it's Eberflus. I think I fuck it up when I say Uberflus. So it's Eberflus.
Okay.
So Eberflus, who is a good defensive coordinator, it's easy to tell the defensive end, even at first when you don't know what's coming, when they're running like he naturally is going to go. Once you're up 13-10 and you go, hey guys, they're starting running backs out. They're not going to hammer the run. He's going to boot a lot and they're going to do a lot of play action. Do not go down the line of scrimmage. So in fairness to Trey, that play is shot when that guy doesn't budge. And honestly, I'd have to go back and look at the tape, but it felt like they cheated another guy up there. There were a couple times where he booted out of that, and it wasn't just the end. There was another linebacker or nickel corner there. And he just, I'll give Trey credit. He just threw it at people's feet. Just do not live to fight another down. Kyle force-fed that play, which, when it's humming, bread and butter. Looks sweet. You're like, oh, jab hit left, jab right. When it doesn't work, the quarterback is screwed. He's just, Michael Vick is screwed, let alone Trey Lance, right? You're just, especially in that footing. And that, to me, is where Kyle's play calling, I think he's one of the best play callers in the league. I think he's a fantastic coach. I thought he had a rough stretch today when he kind of had to adapt on the fly with an injury with a young quarterback that he didn't trust. And we got back to last year when he didn't trust him. Understandable at the time. Trey's injured, the Arizona game, and they just had a pretty, I would say, collegiate game plan of just zone reads and stuff. I thought today, he's earned a little bit more leeway, especially his rapport with Brandon Ayuk, with Juwan Jennings. Like, I mean, it was just, I actually put it more on Kyle than I do Trey. For a large percentage of the game, I thought Trey was pretty under control. At the end, toward the end, as the rain came, he looked like a disaster, but the game was kind of already, in fairness to him, the defense was giving up these huge plays, and he can't control that.
Yeah, and I don't have the second half stats in front of me. First half, the Niners were over 6 yards per carry. Now, obviously, part of that was Elijah Mitchell was almost 7 yards a carry. And they finished the game under 5, which is still pretty good. I mean, 4.8 yards per carry is pretty damn good, right? But
his legs did come in. Like today, just the difference between him and Jimmy, right, in a field like that when McGlinchey, sometimes doesn't touch the guy pass rushing.
Yeah, I mean, the question, right, is would the ball have been out earlier with a more experienced quarterback and the legs don't come into play? But I'm with you. Like his legs were a net positive at the end of the day. There are still areas where I think he needs to get more comfortable with it, but whatever. That's a separate issue.
Did run going forward, I thought, a little bit with more urgency and effort.
I thought he did in short yardage. I still thought he danced when it was 8 yards to go a little bit, but again, easy for me to say.
Yeah, I just think you got to come to grips. He's not, tippy toe smooth runner. He's more of a power runner.
And what I'm saying is I want to see in short yardage when it's like he's got just go get 3 yards, he goes. But when it's 8 yards, I think it looks to me like he's trying to break a 40-yard run instead of running straight for 8 yards and getting 8 yards. That's how I would describe what it looks like to me. But again, that is so far from any issue that the Niners have. Like that is, if he plays a lot, I think that'll take care of itself and he'll get more comfortable with it. But that is just something we talked about a lot last year. And so, just a bullet point to kind of revisit. The other thing to your point on Shanahan is part of the offense. And I go back to the stat I gave you at the beginning of the season. No player in the NFL last year, no quarterback, threw fewer tight window throws than Patrick Mahomes. So Patrick Mahomes' guys were wide ass open the most. And part of the reason you believe in Trey, if you believe in Trey, is because you think Kyle can scheme guys wide ass open, which he did. He schemed Croft wide ass open. He got Ayuk wide ass open. I expected a few more wide ass open throws today from the 49ers. Now, maybe, I don't know. They say the defense is at a disadvantage in this in this type of footing, the DBs, because, the DBs don't know where you're going and the receivers do, whatever. There's a lot of this game I will throw out because of weather, but I expected more wide open guys from the 49ers offense against the Bears.
Do you think Hufanga, because he's from Corvallis, a place that rains a lot, is used to playing in the wet? Because he looked pretty comfortable out there. Just theory thrown out there. I know he's an SC guy, but born and raised Corvallis.
I mean, he was good. He was really good. Better around the line, maybe than in space. But who knows? They might have been playing on turf. I bet some of those Corvallis high schools have artificial surface.